On April 16, 2016, just before dawn, a 911 caller reported a splash under the I-820 bridge at Lake Worth. Police and rescue units arrived. A woman was recovered from the water. Her name was Elizabeth Arellano. She was 28, a medical assistant, and a mother of 4. What first sounded like a tragic fall quickly turned into a homicide investigation, and within days, detectives would make an arrest. I'm Twisted Case. Evidence first, victim-centered storytelling. If you value clarity over sensationalism, you're in the right place. This story starts with a person, not a case file. Elizabeth Arellano, friends called her Liz, worked in healthcare. She wore maroon scrubs, logged long shifts, and still found time for her 4 kids. Colleagues describe her as calm with anxious patience and quick to make a waiting room feel less tense. Family members say she was the glue, the one who checked in, the one who brought energy into a room. At home, things were harder. Elizabeth's marriage had become strained. Relatives later said she was planning to separate. That is a private detail, but it is relevant here, because what happens next appears to grow from conflict that it moved from disagreements to real fear. If you've watched cases like this, you know the pattern. The public face looks normal, even cheerful. The private side carries stress and uncertainty, conversations that end in silence, routines that shift for reasons no one admits out loud. We keep this context in view to understand risk and decision-making, not to blame or excuse anyone. The focus remains on Elizabeth and on what the evidence shows. By mid-April 2016, Elizabeth was staying connected with family and coworkers. On the evening before her death, she spent time with friends. Just before the night turned, she let someone know she had arrived at her parents' house. That last bit matters because it anchors the timeline. From that point on, the record shifts from memory to data. A car, a phone left behind, a quiet neighborhood, and a lake a few miles away. Very early that morning, while it was still dark, someone reported a splash from the I-820 bridge into Lake Worth. Fort Worth police and fire responded. Search and rescue teams entered the water. What they found would determine everything about how this case was handled. The woman recovered was Elizabeth Arellano. She had drowned. A rope was tied around her neck. Attached to the rope was a heavy piece of concrete, about 119 pounds, with a section of wooden fence post embedded in it. This was not consistent with a simple fall. The physical setup looked intentional. In the immediate aftermath, responders must consider every possibility: accidents, suicide, homicide. Those first minutes are full of unknowns, but as facts came into focus, the rope, the weight, and information from people on the scene, investigators moved the case firmly into the homicide column. Back at her parents' home, another detail tightened the picture. Elizabeth's vehicle was found with the key still in the ignition. Her purse and her phone were inside the car. That is not how most people leave voluntarily in the middle of the night. Taken together with the rope and the concrete, the evidence suggested a forced movement and an attempt to ensure she could not resurface. When a case turns this quickly, detectives look for the person with opportunity, motive, and proximity. Who had access that night? Who knew where she would be? Who could move her, and how? From here, the investigation became a straightforward build of digital records, physical comparisons, and interviews. We'll go step by step. Detectives requested cell site location information, CSLI, for the hours around the time Elizabeth was last known to be safe at her parents' home. They also checked CSLI and call activity for the person closest to her, her estranged husband. He told police he had been at home asleep. But the tower activity and call detail records placed a device associated with him closer to the parents' neighborhood at a relevant time. Cell site data does not draw an exact dot on a map, but it can show whether a phone was in one area versus another. In this case, the pattern contradicted the stated alibi. That clash, story versus signal, was the first big crack. If a person says, "I never left home," and their phone suggests otherwise, which one do you treat as the anchor? Investigators canvassed nearby businesses. Surveillance cameras in commercial areas along the likely route captured a pickup truck matching the husband's vehicle at times that again conflicted with his timeline. The footage wasn't Hollywood clear. It didn't have to be. Make, model, distinctive features, and timestamps formed a reliable chain when combined with the phone records. The logic tightened. Elizabeth leaves her car and essentials behind at her parents' home. The person with access is seen on camera in the corridor that connects that home to the bridge area. The phones echoed the same story. Then came the physical evidence. Using search warrants, detectives examined the husband's truck and property. They documented fragments of concrete consistent with fence work. The weight recovered from the lake was a large concrete piece that still contained part of a wooden post. Investigators compared what they found at the property to what was recovered with Elizabeth. They did not need a perfect match, they needed a reasonable connection, and they found it, enough for a judge to view the link as probable and meaningful. There was also a crucial, painful detail reported in affidavits and by local media. A child in the home recognized the rope, something used around the property, and recognized the look of the concrete. To be clear, this child was not an eyewitness to the crime. The recognition relates to familiarity with household items, not an observation of events. But in context, it is devastating and probative. At this point, the case's major pieces, motive inferred from relationship strain, opportunity from proximity, movement through surveillance and phone records, and means through rope and concrete, were all pointing in the same direction. Detectives also captured screenshots of social media activity around the time of the incident. Posts expressing worry, a question about how long a body can survive without water, and the promotion of a funeral fundraiser drew attention. None of this, by itself, proves a crime. People react unpredictably to shock. But investigators catalog everything because timing and tone can support or challenge narrative. In this case, the online behavior blended into the broader pattern prosecutors would later describe in court. By assembling the timeline, detectives built a cohesive theory. Elizabeth returned to her parents' home after a night out. She did not plan to go anywhere else that night. Her key, phone, and purse remained in the car. At some point soon after, she was confronted, restrained with rope attached to a heavy weight, transported to the I-820 bridge, and thrown into Lake Worth alive. She drowned because she could not surface. Those are stark facts. We include only what is necessary to understand the legal outcome. There are no graphic details here, just the minimum needed to explain why investigators and prosecutors moved the way they did. With the affidavits drafted and reviewed, a judge signed the warrants. Detectives executed searches, secured the truck, and continued interviews. The evidence standard for arrest is probable cause, not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Given the combination of phone records, surveillance, household materials, and the timeline anchored by Elizabeth's last known location, detectives believed they had it. Within days of the recovery at Lake Worth, police arrested Elizabeth's husband. He was booked on a capital murder charge. The formal language is clinical, but the moment is life-changing for everyone involved: the accused, the victim's family, and the community that watched word spread online. From here, the case moved from police control to the courthouse. Defense counsel filed motions. Prosecutors prepared for a capital trial. Family members faced a new kind of waiting, months blending into years while hearings stacked up in the docket. Is a faster resolution always better for families? Or does speed risk missing something essential? Most families say the same thing. They want truth and finality, however long that takes. Capital cases move carefully. The death penalty was on the table. That means pretrial litigation about evidence, expert testimony, jury selection, and the punishment phase would be extensive. Prosecutors weigh the strength of their case alongside the risks and emotional cost of a full trial. Defense attorneys weigh the exposure for their client. Sometimes those parallel calculations lead to a plea. In January 2019, the defendant pleaded guilty to capital murder. Under the agreement, he received life in prison without the possibility of parole. The plea removed the death penalty from consideration and ended the case without a trial. For Elizabeth's family, the hearing was an endpoint. It did not restore what they lost, but it did stop the revolving door of court dates. The words guilty and life without parole are heavy. For some families, they carry relief. For others, they carry mixed feelings. Relief at certainty and questions about whether the maximum possible punishment should have been pursued to a verdict. What mattered most to those closest to Elizabeth was that the law recognized what happened, named it accurately, and removed the person responsible from the community permanently. In Texas, a life without parole sentence in a capital case is exactly that, a life term with no chance of release. We return now to Elizabeth, not as an exhibit, but as a person. Friends recall her smile and the way she handled stress at work with patience. Family remembers holidays, small jokes, and the routines that made the house feel steady. When the violence happened, it didn't erase those memories. It changed how they feel to hold them. After cases like this, families often say that ordinary rooms, living rooms, bedrooms, porches, become quieter in a way that is hard to describe. You need new rituals in the same spaces just to move forward. This is also a story about thresholds, literal doors, and figurative lines. Elizabeth texted that she had reached her parents' place. Her car key, phone, and purse were left inside the vehicle. That detail still troubles people who hear it. A front porch is supposed to be a boundary that keeps chaos out. When harm comes from someone you know, that boundary can fail. Recognizing that reality is not cynicism, it's a call to pay attention to early warning signs and to create safer routes out of dangerous situations. Many viewers ask, were there signs earlier? In many relationships, conflict is punctuated by calm, and danger escalates quietly. We cannot retroactively assign blame for not predicting an exact event. What we can do is learn what patterns, control, isolation, threats, stalking, sudden monitoring of movements often precede lethal outcomes. If you or someone you know is living with those patterns, help is available. Safety planning can be done even if you are not ready or able to leave immediately. Advocates can help you document incidents, plan safe times to move, and protect children. It is confidential. It is judgment-free. If a friend confides in you about fear at home, will you know what to say? I hear you. I believe you. Let's look at options together. Those words can open a door that had felt locked. Before we close, let's summarize the case in plain language to ensure it's fully clear. Those 7 points cover the entire arc, from discovery to sentence. If you remember nothing else, remember this. The case turned when investigators kept testing the first story against hard evidence. They did not settle for the quickest explanation when physical facts contradicted it. What does it take for an investigator or a community member to question the first, most convenient label? Often it's as simple as noticing what's missing. In this case, the phone, the purse, the key, and the logic of how a person would leave at that hour. We've told this story with care, centering Elizabeth as a person and focusing on verifiable facts. No reenactments of violence, no embellishment. Our choices are intentional. True crime storytelling has a responsibility to inform without glamorizing, to respect families while still explaining the system that handled their case. If you are new here, that is our approach every episode. Human first, evidence second, arguments grounded in the record. We welcome corrections from those with direct knowledge. We do not invite speculation about people not charged or about private behavior with no bearing on the case. The legal outcome in this case was certain and permanent: life without parole after a guilty plea. It spared Elizabeth's family a lengthy capital trial and an uncertain penalty phase.
At the same time, some viewers will ask whether the plea was an appropriate compromise, given the brutality of the method and the presence of 4 children left behind. We ask that you keep the conversation respectful and centered on values, not on speculation. If this episode helped you understand the case clearly, consider subscribing. It helps us keep telling stories this way, carefully and with the people at the center. In memory of Elizabeth Arellano, if you or someone you know needs help, 1-800-799-SAFE.
Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe for more gripping true crime breakdowns, mysteries, and criminal psychology stories, only on Twisted Case.